Well, folks, you know those internet and cell service outages that hit Los Alamos back in March? Yeah, the ones that basically shut the whole town down. Not just once, but twice. It was on the 11th and again on the 17th. Those weren't your typical little blips. We're talking a full-on digital blackout.
And what's really striking is that both of these outages happened right smack in the middle of that massive waterline replacement project they've got going on out on NM4, the one where they're putting in new fiber conduit too. It's almost too much of a coincidence, don't you think? So
Yeah,
that's what we're going to dig into today, the connection between these outages and this big infrastructure project.
you got it. We're going deep on this one. We've been poring over local news reports, even checked out some firsthand accounts from people who were right in the thick of it, trying to piece together exactly what went wrong and, how folks reacted to being suddenly cut off. We're aiming to give you the whole story, a clear picture of what went down, who was involved, and most importantly, why it happened.
And thinking of the bigger picture here, it really highlights just how crucial, reliable internet and cell service have become. I mean, it's way beyond just being convenient these days. It affects businesses, emergency services, basically everything.
So let's break down what happened. We had these two separate incidents, right? The first one hit on March 11th, then bam, just a few days later, Monday, March 17th, round two. And from what we gathered, that second outage started around 8 in the morning.
And get this, both times, the culprit was a damaged fiber optic line owned by Lumen. And both breaks happened, wouldn't you know it, right along that stretch of NM4 where they're working on the waterline replacement project between the truck route, NM502 and White Rock. Talk about a rocky start to a project that was supposed to improve things. Two major outages in 1 week that's got to make you wonder what's going on.
Right. And what's interesting is that the way the lines were broken each time was different. On March 11th, it happened when they were backfilling. That's when they put the dirt back in the trench after they lay down the new water pipe, right? So it seems like a piece of equipment clipped the fiber line then.
Now, the second time, March 17th, it happened while Wagner Construction, the contractor working for the Los Alamos Department of Public Utilities, DPU, was digging a trench to put in more of the new pipeline. And here's the kicker. They were following all the markings, using the maps, everything. Even Lumen sent out their own locator to mark the lines. So it wasn't just someone digging carelessly. It was more like the system itself failed.
Which makes you wonder, why didn't following the markings work? You said they had a locator and everything.
Well, it's tricky. These fiber optic lines, they look like a single cable, but inside there are tons of tiny, hair-thin strands of fiber all bundled together. And to find them underground, they use these things called tracer wires. They're supposed to run right next to the fiber optic cables and give off a signal that a locator can pick up.
Okay, so picture this. Lumen's locator does its thing, right? Follows the signal from the tracer wire, marks the spot where they think the fiber line is buried. But here's the problem. Somewhere along the way, who knows when, that tracer wire got separated from the actual fiber optic cable. And you wouldn't know it just from using the locator. It's like following a guide rope that's not attached to anything anymore. You think you're in the right place, but you're not.
Exactly. So the contractor's digging where they think it's safe, based on the information they have. But the reality is, it's not. And then you've got to factor in the age of these lines. This fiber optic line along NM4 has been down there for decades. DPU couldn't even tell us exactly how long.
Wow, decades. I mean, things get brittle after a while, right? Especially underground. So I can only imagine how tricky the repairs must have been.
Oh, they were a nightmare. Every time there was a break, they had to dig up about 50 feet of line on either side just to get to the damaged part. And remember, all those tiny fiber strands inside, they have to splice each one back together. It's incredibly delicate work.
Plus, it's not like the fiber optic line was laid out in a nice straight line.
Nope, not at all. They had to go around trees, rocks, culverts, you name it. So the cable's all over the place. That makes the splicing even harder, more time-consuming. It's a huge mess.
So who's to blame for all this?
Yeah.
Well, DPU came right out and said that the first break, the one on March 11th, that was on the contractor. But the second one, on the 17th, that was Lumen's fault.
But to be fair, it sounds like everyone tried to work together to fix things as quickly as possible. DPU, Wagner Construction, Lumen, even the PRC. They were all involved in getting those repairs done.
Yeah, and James Ellerid, the deputy utility manager at DPU, he said, and I quote, "Our contractor is doing everything possible to assist with fiber line repairs. Before digging, they've also been doing a thorough job of potholing, which is an extra step that lets them actually see where the lines are buried. Even still, there's no guarantee that maps and locates are 100% correct."
Hmm.
So, it sounds like they were trying to be careful, but there's always a risk when you're dealing with stuff buried underground.
And that quote really brings up a point that keeps coming up. Can we trust these maps and locates? Especially when we're talking about infrastructure that's been around for ages. Like that tracer wire being separated from the fiber line, that's a big red flag. It tells me the system isn't foolproof.
And what about Lumen? What were they doing about all this?
Well, after that second outage, DPU basically told Lumen, look, we need more help from you guys on the ground. Lumen sent an email back, but DPU didn't see much of a change in their presence at the repair site. They were hoping for someone from Lumen to be there, dedicated to the issue.
It sounds like communication could have been better.
Definitely. And there's more. It turns out that in a lot of places, the fiber optic line and the locate wire were way farther apart than they should have been. The law says they got to be within 18 inches of each other. But that wasn't the case in many spots along NM4, so that suggests maybe the utility didn't install things properly in the first place.
Oh, wow. And to add insult to injury, the engineering plans for the waterline project, they didn't show the fiber optic line in the right place either. So even when the contractor asked for utility locates, the information they got wasn't always reliable.
It's a real mess. And you know what? This whole thing is going to cost more than they planned. Wagner Construction, the contractor, told the county about these, quote, unforeseen conditions. You know what that means. They're going to ask for more money to cover the delays and the extra work.
I bet this whole situation has budget overrun written all over it. So let's zoom out a bit and talk about the NM4 project itself. This wasn't just a random upgrade, right?
No, it was actually triggered by the New Mexico Department of Transportation. They're planning to reconstruct NM4. So DPU decided to take this opportunity to replace that old, deteriorating water line while they had the chance.
Ah, I see. So kill two birds with one stone.
Yeah.
Smart?
Exactly. The main goal is to replace that 16-inch concrete water line, you know the one, with a brand new, much more durable 3.5-mile ductile iron pipeline. And they're reducing the size in some areas to 12 inches. The old line had been failing left and right, so this upgrade was really necessary to make sure people have reliable water service.
Yeah, that makes sense. But it sounds like the water line wasn't the only thing they were working on, right? You mentioned fiber optic conduit earlier.
That's right. DPU partnered up with San Ildefonso Pueblo. The Pueblo is taking advantage of the open trench to lay down their own fiber optic conduit. It's for their future community broadband network, what they call the Middle Mile Project. They're putting in two 1.25-inch conduits made of HDPE, high-density polyethylene.
HDPE?
Yeah, it's a type of plastic that's really tough and durable, perfect for underground installations.
Cool. So once this project is finished, they'll have a new water line, the existing Lumen infrastructure, and a brand new fiber line owned by San Ildefonso Pueblo, all in one neat package. That's a lot of stuff going on underground.
It is, and it's not cheap either. The whole project's going to cost around $6 million. $400,000 of that is coming from New Mexico Special Appropriations, and the rest, $5 million, is from the Water Trust Board.
$6 million. Wow. So when's this whole thing supposed to wrap up?
Well, it started back on February 12th of this year, and they initially said it would go on until January 2026. But there's good news. At a county council meeting on March 27th, they gave an update and said the project's about 67% done, and they've moved up the completion date to June 2025, so they're ahead of schedule.
That is good news. So what's next? What's coming up in the project?
Well, as of that March 27th meeting, they were about to start testing the new water lines. They said it would be within 2 weeks, and the first section should be up and running pretty soon after that. They're also extending the work into White Rock. They're hoping to reach Rover Boulevard soon, and then they'll have about a week's worth of work inside the town itself, ending at the fire station parking lot.
Makes sense. So it sounds like things are moving along, which is good.
Yeah, and they've come up with some clever ways to deal with those archaeologically sensitive areas that LNL identified. In some spots, instead of digging a whole new trench, they're slipping the new pipe right inside the old one. It's called sleeving. That saved them about 1,700 feet of trenching in one area near the fiber optic line. They're hoping to use this technique in other sensitive spots to avoid hitting anything important.
Sounds like they're learning as they go, adapting to the challenges. So we've talked a lot about the technical stuff and the project details, but what about the people? How did these outages affect the community? What kind of concerns did they raise?
Well, that's where we see how vulnerable we are to these kinds of disruptions. We found a letter to the editor written by a resident, Richard Skolnick. He was pretty upset about how the county handled the risks of this project. He felt like they didn't have a plan to prevent these outages from happening in the first place.
He makes a good point. Like, what if they had thought about the potential economic impact beforehand? Or What if they had gotten input from the Chamber of Commerce, the schools, the healthcare providers, the people who would be hit the hardest by an outage? Seems like they could have been more proactive instead of just reacting after the fact.
Right. And Skolnick, he didn't just focus on the economic impact. He was worried about emergency preparedness, too. He even brought up the county's emergency radio station in White Rock, questioning how reliable it is. He basically said that we're relying too much on federal agencies for emergency communication.
Yeah, that's a big concern. What if something happened and we couldn't communicate? So what did the Kenneck County have to say about all this?
Well, at that county council meeting on March 27th, Councilor Rin Herman brought up the impact on small businesses. She even asked if they could get some kind of reimbursement from Lumen or the contractor to help those businesses recover.
Did they?
Well, James Allerid from DPU said they've been telling businesses to contact Lumen and the contractor directly. He also mentioned that Lumen doesn't usually share information about whether or not they're compensating businesses.
Interesting. But what about LA&L? Did they lose internet too?
Nope, LA&L was fine. They had internet and cell service the whole time. It turns out they installed a backup system back in October 2024. It uses dual-band microwave technology, so when the fiber lines went down, their network traffic was automatically rerouted through this backup system. No downtime for them. They have these microwave dishes that transmit signals between their main site and a building in Santa Fe.
Wow. So they were prepared. Too bad the county didn't have a similar backup system in place.
Well, they do have a microwave tower, but County Manager Anne Laurent said it had a firewall issue, so their backup didn't work. And she basically said that for most people in the community, having a backup internet system is a personal expense. Like, if you want Starlink, you got to pay for it yourself.
Makes sense. So did anyone else from the community speak up about this?
Yeah, Andrea Determan from Los Alamos Public Schools talked about how hard it is for the schools to get reimbursed for the disruptions. She was also worried about future outages affecting their operations. And if you look online, people were not happy. They were talking about losing customers, losing revenue, having to spend extra money to find internet access, having trouble working from home. Some people even had to drive to other towns just to get online.
You know what else came up? People couldn't get code red alerts during the outages. That's a big deal, especially with wildfire season coming up. One person even said they went out and bought a Starlink kit just to be safe.
Makes sense. People are looking for solutions. And Alan Sains, the owner of Lanette, he sent a message to his customers saying that there are probably going to be more outages while this construction is going on. He also said they're working on setting up a third backup wireless link to either Santa Fe or Espanola, just to be extra safe.
Good for them. I bet the businesses are especially feeling the pain. Did anyone try to measure the economic impact?
Yeah, the Los Alamos Local Business Coalition put out a survey to see how badly businesses were hit. And one little detail that came out of all this is that the new fiber conduit they're putting in does have a tracer wire. So hopefully we won't have the same locating problems with the new infrastructure. Fingers crossed.
So let's wrap this up. What are the big takeaways here?
Well, first of all, these internet and self-service outages were basically a domino effect of things going wrong during this big waterline project. It shows just how hard it is to work with old, buried utilities and how important it is to have accurate maps and good communication between everyone involved.
Absolutely. And the impact on the community was huge. Businesses couldn't operate. People couldn't work from home. There were concerns about emergency services. It's clear that we need more resilient communication systems, not just in Los Alamos, but everywhere.
Yeah, it's great that they're working on finishing the waterline project and putting in new fiber lines. And it's smart of Lanette to set up those backup links. But this whole situation really makes you think, doesn't it?
It does. We rely so much on the internet these days. What if this happened again or somewhere else? What can we do to prepare for that? How can we make our systems more resilient so we're not so vulnerable when something like this happens? That's something we all need to think about.
Couldn't agree more.
Well, folks, that's our deep dive into the Los Alamos internet and cell service outages. Stay tuned for more in-depth coverage of the issues that matter to you.
And as always, thanks for listening.
See you next time.